Close your eyes for a moment and imagine absolute darkness. In that darkness, something moves, something watches, something waits. This primal fear, this certainty that malevolent forces exist beyond our perception, has haunted humanity since we first learned to speak, to dream, to imagine the unseen. Welcome to the world of demons. Throughout human history, across every continent, within every culture, in every era, from the ancient past to our modern present, humanity has populated the shadows with beings of malevolent intent. We have called them by countless names: demons, devils, evil spirits, malevolent entities, dark forces. Yet, despite the diversity of names and forms, certain patterns emerge with remarkable consistency. These beings tempt, torment, possess, and plague humanity. They represent our deepest fears made manifest, our darkest impulses given form, and perhaps something even more mysterious. The study of demons, known as demonology, represents one of humanity's oldest intellectual pursuits. Long before we developed formal sciences, before we built universities or wrote encyclopedias, our ancestors were carefully cataloging the inhabitants of the spirit world, documenting their names, their powers, their weaknesses, and the methods by which they might be controlled or banished. This wasn't idle superstition or primitive ignorance. For our ancestors, demons were as real as diseases, as dangerous as wild animals, and understanding them was as practical as understanding the weather or the seasons. Consider the universality of this belief. The ancient Sumerians, writing in cuneiform on clay tablets 5,000 years ago, described demons in elaborate detail. The Egyptians painted them on tomb walls and inscribed protection spells on papyrus scrolls. The Greeks and Romans debated their nature philosophically, while also creating rituals to ward them off. The great monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all developed sophisticated demonologies, complete with hierarchies, classifications, and theological explanations. In India, China, Japan, and Southeast Asia, demon beliefs formed integral parts of Hindu, Buddhist, Shinto, and folk religious traditions. The indigenous peoples of Africa, the Americas, Australia, and the Pacific Islands all maintained their own rich traditions of demon lore. This isn't coincidence. The universal presence of demon beliefs points to something fundamental in the human experience. Whether demons are objective supernatural entities, psychological archetypes, cultural constructs, or some combination thereof, they clearly fulfill a crucial role in how humans understand and navigate their world. They provide explanations for suffering, illness, misfortune, and moral evil. They externalize internal struggles, giving form to our temptations, fears, and darker impulses. They create boundaries between the sacred and profane, the clean and unclean, the acceptable and forbidden. The word demon itself has a fascinating etymology that reveals much about how our understanding of these beings has evolved. It derives from the Greek daimon, which originally referred to spirits or divine powers that could be either benevolent or malevolent. These daimons were intermediary beings, existing between gods and humans, influencing human affairs but not necessarily with evil intent. Socrates famously spoke of his daimon as a guiding spirit that warned him away from wrong actions. It was only later, particularly with the rise of Christianity, that the term became exclusively associated with evil spirits opposed to divine will. This linguistic evolution reflects a broader theological shift. In many ancient polytheistic religions, the spirit world was viewed as morally complex, inhabited by beings with various dispositions, motivations, and relationships with humanity. Some were helpful, some harmful, and many were neutral or unpredictable. The rise of monotheism, with its emphasis on a single, all-good God, necessitated a different cosmology. If God was perfectly good and all-powerful, how could evil exist? The answer, in part, was demons, fallen angels, rebellious spirits who had turned away from God and now actively worked to corrupt creation and lead humanity astray. Yet even within monotheistic frameworks, demon beliefs remained remarkably diverse. Christian demonology drew from Jewish traditions but added its own innovations, particularly around the figure of Satan and the concept of demonic possession. Islamic demonology developed the concept of jinn, beings created from smokeless fire who possessed free will and could choose good or evil. Jewish mystical traditions, particularly Kabbalah, developed elaborate systems describing the Qliphoth, or shell's demonic anti-forces corresponding to the divine emanations. As we journey through this exploration, we'll discover that demons are far more than simple bogeymen or primitive superstitions. They are complex, cultural constructs that reflect deep truths about human psychology, social dynamics, and spiritual yearning. They appear in our most ancient texts and our most modern media. They haunt our nightmares and inspire our art. They serve as explanations for the inexplicable and as symbols for internal struggles. To study demons is to study humanity itself, our fears, our moral frameworks, our attempts to make sense of suffering and evil, and our eternal fascination with the boundary between the known and unknown, the natural and supernatural. In this comprehensive exploration, we'll travel through time and across cultures. We'll examine demons in ancient Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece. We'll delve into the rich demonologies of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We'll explore Eastern perspectives from Hindu, Buddhist, and East Asian traditions. We'll investigate the elaborate demon catalogues of medieval Europe, including the famous grimoires that claim to provide instructions for summoning and controlling demons. We'll look at folklore from around the world, examining how different cultures have imagined demonic beings and developed methods to protect themselves. We'll also turn a psychological lens on these ancient beliefs, exploring how modern depth psychology, particularly the work of Carl Jung, has reinterpreted demons as psychological projections and aspects of the shadow self. We'll see how contemporary occultists and practitioners of ceremonial magic have revived and reinterpreted ancient demon traditions. And we'll examine how demons have been portrayed in popular culture, from classic literature to modern horror films, and how these portrayals both reflect and shape our collective understanding. What you're about to experience is not a simple catalogue of monster stories, though there will be fascinating stories aplenty. This is an intellectual and imaginative journey into one of humanity's most enduring preoccupations. Whether you approach the subject as a believer in literal supernatural entities, a psychological researcher interested in the human mind, a cultural anthropologist studying human belief systems, or simply someone fascinated by the strange and mysterious, there is something here for you. The realm of demons is vast and deep, It encompasses thousands of years of human thought, fear, and imagination. It touches on theology, philosophy, psychology, anthropology, history, and literature. It reveals how humans have understood morality, consciousness, suffering, and the nature of evil itself. As we explore this realm together, keep an open mind. The question of whether demons really exist in some objective sense is perhaps less important than understanding why humans have so consistently believed in them and what that belief reveals about us. So take a deep breath. We're about to descend into the darkness, to explore the realm of demons in all its terrible and fascinating complexity. We'll meet entities both ancient and modern, from all corners of the world and all periods of human history. We'll learn their names, their powers, their origins, and their purposes. We'll discover how humans have fought them, fled from them, and sometimes even summoned them deliberately. By the time we emerge from this journey, you'll never think about demons, or perhaps about yourself in quite the same way again. Let us begin at the very beginning, in the cradle of civilization itself, where humanity first began writing down its encounters with the demonic realm, ancient Mesopotamian demons. In the land between two rivers, in the ancient region we now call Mesopotamia, civilization was born. Here, the Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, and Assyrians built the first cities, invented writing, developed sophisticated mathematics and astronomy, and created complex legal codes. But these same civilizations, which gave humanity so many gifts of culture and knowledge, also gave us our first detailed written accounts of demons. The Mesopotamian worldview was inhabited by countless spirits, and the boundary between gods, demons, and other supernatural entities was often fluid. The universe was seen as fundamentally chaotic, with order maintained only through constant vigilance and proper ritual. Demons were part of this cosmic reality, beings of power who could bring disease, misfortune, and death to humans who failed to protect themselves adequately. Unlike the moral dualism that would later characterize Western religious thought, Mesopotamian demons weren't necessarily evil in a theological sense. They were dangerous, certainly, but their actions weren't framed as rebellion against divine will or cosmic order. They simply were forces of nature, aspects of reality that humans had to navigate. Much like storms, wild animals, or diseases. Some demons were even enlisted to fight against other, more dangerous, supernatural threats. The Mesopotamian demon that has most captured modern imagination is undoubtedly Pazuzu. This demon was depicted with a grotesque canine face, scaly body, snake-headed penis, and large wings. He was the king of the wind demons, associated with the destructive and unpredictable southwest wind that could bring drought, famine, and locusts. Yet paradoxically, Pazuzu was also invoked for protection, particularly against the even more dangerous demoness Lamashtu. Clay amulets bearing Pazuzu's image were worn by pregnant women and new mothers, as his fierce power was believed to drive away demons who threatened children. Pazuzu became internationally famous in modern times through his appearance in the 1971 novel The Exorcist, and its subsequent film adaptation, where he was portrayed as the demon possessing the young girl Regan. While the novel and film took considerable creative liberties with Mesopotamian demonology, They introduced millions of people to this ancient figure and sparked renewed interest in Mesopotamian demon beliefs. Lamashtu, whom Pazuzu opposed, was one of the most feared demons in the Mesopotamian pantheon. Unlike Pazuzu, who was a demon, Lamashtu was actually a fallen goddess, the daughter of the sky god Anu. She was said to prey upon pregnant women and infants, drinking the blood of babies and eating their flesh. She brought disease, particularly fever, and was associated with sudden infant death. Clay plaques showing Lamashtu typically depicted her with a lion's head, donkey's teeth and ears, bird's talons, and standing or kneeling on a donkey while holding snakes. The fear of Lamashtu was profound and practical in an era of high infant mortality. Blaming such deaths on a demon provided both explanation and a sense that protective action might be taken. Protection against Lamashtu involved elaborate rituals and amulets. One common protective plaque showed the demon herself at the top, with below it images of protective beings including Pazuzu. The idea was that displaying an image of the demon along with her enemies would prevent her from approaching. Incantations were recited, describing the demon being driven back to the underworld. These weren't simple superstitious gestures, but sophisticated ritual technologies developed over centuries of practice and refinement. The Lilith demons represent another fascinating aspect of Mesopotamian demonology. These were female demons who roamed at night, associated with storms and wind. The name Lilith is related to the Sumerian word for wind or spirit, and these demons were thought to haunt wilderness areas, abandoned places, and liminal spaces. While they could attack men, women, and children, they were particularly associated with threatening male sexuality and prowling around the periphery of civilization. The Lilith would later evolve into the figure of Lilith in Jewish tradition, where she gained a much more elaborate mythology as Adam's first wife who refused to submit to him and became the mother of demons. This Jewish Lilith would in turn influence Christian and Islamic demon traditions, as well as modern feminist reinterpretations that view her as a symbol of female independence and rebellion against patriarchal authority. The journey of the Lilith from Mesopotamian wind demons to modern feminist icon demonstrates how demon figures can transform radically over time while maintaining certain core associations. Another category of Mesopotamian demons were the Udug or Utuku, which served as a general term for demons or evil spirits. The Udug could cause disease, misfortune, and mental disturbances. They were thought to lurk in desolate places, ruins, deserts, graveyards, and attack travelers or those foolish enough to venture into their territories. Some Udug were relatively minor nuisances, while others were devastatingly powerful. Texts describe Udug of the desert, of the mountain, of the sea, each associated with its own domain and particular dangers. The 7 evil gods, or Sebetu, represented a particularly dangerous class of demons. These were offspring of the sky god Anu and the earth goddess Ki, and were associated with natural disasters, diseases, and various forms of destruction. They were said to have played a role in the Great Flood myth, predating the biblical flood story. The number 7 held special significance in Mesopotamian culture, appearing repeatedly in myth, magic, and ritual, and these 7 demons embodied the principle of cosmic chaos, threatening to overwhelm order. Mesopotamian demon protection involved a sophisticated system of magic, ritual, and material culture. Clay amulets were extremely common, bearing images of protective demons, gods, or inscriptions with incantations. These weren't merely symbolic but were understood as technology devices that literally created a protective field around the wearer. The logic was partly sympathetic magic like repels like, or the image of a powerful being channels its power, and partly contractual. The amulet represented an agreement with protective supernatural forces. Incantation texts reveal the complex ritual procedures used by Mesopotamian exorcists, who were professional specialists with significant training. These exorcists, called Ashipu, mastered elaborate diagnostic procedures to determine which demon was responsible for an affliction, then performed the appropriate counter-rituals. Diagnosis involved careful observation of symptoms, divination, and knowledge of demon characteristics and preferences. The rituals involved not just spoken incantations but also symbolic actions, offerings, and the creation of material objects designed to trap or drive away the offending demon. The influence of Mesopotamian demonology on later traditions cannot be overstated. Jewish exiles in Babylon during the 6th century BCE were exposed to these elaborate demon beliefs, and elements were incorporated into Jewish tradition. The idea of demons causing illness, the use of amulets and incantations for protection, the practice of specialized exorcism, all these would be passed on and transformed in Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. Even specific demon names and characteristics were sometimes adapted and reinterpreted. What makes Mesopotamian demonology particularly significant is that it represents our first extensive written records of demon beliefs. Earlier cultures surely had their own demon traditions, but without writing, these were transmitted orally and have largely been lost. The clay tablets of Mesopotamia preserve for us a snapshot of Bronze Age demon beliefs in extraordinary detail. We can read the actual incantations spoken thousands of years ago. We can see the amulets worn by ancient Babylonian mothers to protect their children. We can understand the logic and the fear that motivated these practices. The Mesopotamian approach to demons was fundamentally pragmatic. These weren't abstract, theological concepts, but practical problems requiring practical solutions. A demon attacking your family was as real as a disease or a hostile army, and you dealt with it using the best technology available in this case. Ritual technology. The elaboration and sophistication of Mesopotamian demonology reflects both the seriousness with which demons were taken and the intellectual creativity applied to understanding and controlling them. As we move forward in our exploration, keep the Mesopotamian template in mind. Many themes will encounter demons causing illness, protective amulets, professional exorcists. Elaborate demon hierarchies all have their roots in these ancient Mesopotamian traditions. The demons have changed their names and adapted to new cultural contexts, but fundamental patterns established in ancient Mesopotamia continue to influence demon beliefs even today. Demons in ancient Egypt and Greece. Moving westward from Mesopotamia, we encounter two more ancient civilizations whose contributions to demonology would shape Western thought: Egypt and Greece. While their approaches differed significantly from each other and from Mesopotamian traditions, both civilizations developed sophisticated understandings of malevolent supernatural forces. Ancient Egyptian cosmology was dominated by the concept of Ma'at, cosmic order, balance, harmony, and justice. The primary spiritual concern was maintaining Ma'at against the forces of Isfet, or chaos. The Egyptian gods worked constantly to preserve Ma'at, and humans were expected to do their part through proper ritual, ethical behavior, and support of the pharaoh, who served as the guarantor of cosmic order. Demons, in Egyptian thought, were primarily agents of Isfet, beings of chaos who threatened the established order. The most significant demon in Egyptian mythology was Apep, also called Apophis, an enormous serpent who embodied chaos itself. Each night, as the sun god Ra journeyed through the underworld in his solar barque, Apep would attack, attempting to swallow Ra and end the cycle of day and night. Only through the combined efforts of various protective deities, along with ritual support from priests performing ceremonies in temples, was Ra able to defeat Apep and emerge each dawn. This wasn't a one-time mythic event, but a continual struggle that required ongoing ritual maintenance. The daily sunrise could never be taken for granted. The Apep mythology reveals something crucial about the Egyptian understanding of demons. They represented not merely individual threats, but existential dangers to reality itself. If Apep succeeded in swallowing Ra, it wouldn't just mean darkness, it would mean the end of existence, a return to the primordial chaos that existed before creation. This elevated demons from personal threats to cosmic ones, and made demon-fighting rituals a matter of universal significance. Egyptian tombs and papyri reveal a wide variety of other dangerous supernatural entities. The tomb was seen as particularly vulnerable to spiritual attack, as the deceased had to navigate numerous perils during their journey to the afterlife. Demons might attack the soul, steal offerings meant for the dead, or prevent the deceased from reaching paradise. This spawned an elaborate tradition of funerary magic, with spells, amulets, and guardians placed in tombs to protect against demonic attack. The Egyptian Book of the Dead, more properly translated as Book of Coming Forth by Day, contains numerous spells for protection against demons and dangerous spirits. These spells had to be recited correctly, sometimes accompanied by ritual actions or magical objects, to ensure their effectiveness. The deceased might encounter demons with fearsome names like He Who Dances in Blood or Bone Breaker, entities that had to be propitiated, outwitted, or dominated through knowledge of their secret names. Knowledge of true names held tremendous power in Egyptian magic. If you knew a demon's or god's true name, you could command them. This belief spawned an entire tradition of magical texts listing demon names and the proper methods for invoking or banishing them. The idea that knowing something's true name grants power over it would persist through Jewish mysticism, Christian ceremonial magic, and even into modern fantasy literature. Greek demonology presents a fascinating contrast to both Mesopotamian and Egyptian traditions. The Greek term daimon originally referred to spirits or minor deities that inhabited a middle ground between gods and humans. These daimons were not necessarily evil. They could be protective, neutral, or harmful, depending on their nature and how they were treated. Each person was thought to have a personal daimon that guided their life, a concept that would later influence ideas about guardian angels. The gradual transformation of the Greek daimon concept from neutral or positive to predominantly negative reflects broader shifts in Greek religious thought, particularly as it encountered and was eventually absorbed by Christianity. Early Greek philosophers like Plato and Socrates spoke of daimones in mostly positive terms. Socrates' famous daimon was a guiding voice that warned him away from wrong action. Plato described daimones as intermediary beings who carried prayers to gods and divine commands to humans. However, even in classical Greek thought, there were dangerous spiritual entities. The Erinyes, or Furies, were ancient goddesses of vengeance who tormented those who committed certain crimes, particularly murder of kin or violation of hospitality. While technically goddesses rather than demons, they embodied the Greek concept of supernatural entities that punished human wrongdoing. They were depicted as terrifying hags with snakes for hair, bloodshot eyes and bat wings, and they drove their victims mad with guilt and terror. The Empusa was a demoness sent by the goddess Hecate, described as having one leg of bronze and one of a donkey. She could shapeshift into a beautiful woman and seduced young men before drinking their blood and eating their flesh. The Empusa shared characteristics with later vampire legends and demons that prey upon human sexuality. Similar was the Lamia, originally a queen whom the goddess Hera transformed into a child-eating monster after Zeus seduced her. The Lamia could also take beautiful form to seduce men before revealing her monstrous nature. These Greek myths reveal concerns about the dangers of uncontrolled sexuality, the threat of the monstrous feminine, and the vulnerability of children, themes that would recur in demon beliefs across many cultures. The beautiful woman who transforms into a monster became a persistent archetype in Western demonology, appearing in medieval succubus legends and continuing through vampire fiction into modern horror. The Greek approach to protection against malevolent spirits combined religious ritual with philosophy and reason. Greek mystery religions offered initiation into secret rites that promised protection from spiritual dangers and security in the afterlife. The Orphic mysteries, Eleusinian mysteries, and various other cults provided frameworks for understanding and navigating the spirit world. Meanwhile, philosophers attempted to understand daimones rationally, as natural phenomena that could be explained and perhaps controlled through knowledge and virtue. When Greek and Roman culture encountered Jewish and early Christian thought, a fascinating synthesis occurred. The Greek concept of daimones was mapped onto Jewish ideas about demons and fallen angels, creating a hybrid demonology that would dominate Western thought. The New Testament was written in Greek, and when it spoke of demons, it used Greek terminology, but the underlying concepts were thoroughly Jewish, rooted in traditions quite different from classical Greek thought. This synthesis becomes particularly apparent in the writings of early Christian theologians, who were typically educated in Greek philosophy but converted to Christianity. They had to reconcile their philosophical training with new Christian beliefs. Were daimons the same as Christian demons? If pagan gods weren't real, what were the entities that Greeks and Romans had been worshipping? The theological solution was often to identify pagan gods and daimons with demons, fallen angels who deceived humanity into worshipping them instead of the true God. This reinterpretation had profound consequences. It transformed the relatively neutral Greek concept of daimones into something wholly evil. It provided a theological explanation for pagan religion not as simple human error, but as active demonic deception. And it set the stage for centuries of Christian demon fighting, as combating demons became synonymous with combating paganism and heresy. The legacy of Egyptian and Greek demonology in Western thought is immense. Egyptian ideas about demons as agents of cosmic chaos, the power of true names, and the necessity of specialized magical knowledge to combat spiritual threats all influenced later magical traditions. Greek concepts of daimones as intermediary beings the development of philosophical approaches to understanding spirits, and the rich mythology of specific demonic entities, all fed into the developing Western magical and theological traditions. By the time Christianity emerged as a dominant force in the Mediterranean world, it inherited and synthesized elements from Mesopotamian, Egyptian, Greek, and Roman demon beliefs, combining them with its own Jewish foundations. The result was a rich and complex demonology that would reach its full expression in medieval theology and persist in various forms into our modern world. Biblical and Judeo-Christian demonology. The Judeo-Christian tradition has arguably produced the most influential and elaborate demonology in Western history. From ancient Jewish texts through Christian theology and into modern popular culture, biblical demonology has shaped how millions of people understand evil, temptation, and the supernatural. Yet this tradition is far more complex and varied than many realize, having evolved considerably over thousands of years. The Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, contains surprisingly few references to demons compared to later Jewish and Christian texts. Early Israelite religion was strictly monotheistic, focused on the worship of Yahweh as the one true God. The existence of other supernatural beings was acknowledged but minimized in importance. Evil and misfortune were typically attributed directly to God's will as punishment for sin or testing of faith, rather than to independent demonic forces. However, certain passages hint at a more complex spirit world. The book of Leviticus mentions Azazel, to whom a scapegoat was sent on the Day of Atonement, carrying away the sins of the people. Later Jewish tradition would identify Azazel as a fallen angel who taught humans forbidden knowledge and became a demon prince in hell. The reference to demons or Shadim appears in Deuteronomy and Psalms, referring to false gods or spirits associated with pagan worship, but without the detailed demonology that would develop later. The most famous Old Testament demon encounter occurs in the book of Job, where the Satan, notably with the definite article, meaning the adversary or the accuser, appears as a member of God's heavenly court. This Satan is not the cosmic evil force of later Christian theology, but rather something like a prosecuting attorney in the divine courtroom, whose job is to test human faithfulness. Satan receives permission from God to afflict Job, stripping away his wealth, killing his children, and inflicting painful diseases, all to test whether Job's faith depends on his prosperity. The transformation of the Satan from a job title to Satan, the proper name, from a heavenly official to God's cosmic enemy, represents one of the most significant developments in religious history. This transformation occurred primarily during the Second Temple period, particularly after the Babylonian exile, when Jewish thought was exposed to Persian Zoroastrian dualism. Zoroastrianism posited an eternal struggle between Ahura Mazda, the god of light and goodness, and Angra Mainyu, Ahriman, the spirit of darkness and evil. This dualistic framework profoundly influenced Jewish apocalyptic literature and eventually Christian theology. The Book of Enoch, a Jewish apocalyptic text written during the Second Temple period but not included in most biblical canons, provides extensive demonology. It tells the story of the Watchers, angels sent to observe humanity, who instead lusted after human women and descended to earth to mate with them. These fallen angels taught humans forbidden knowledge, weapon-making, cosmetics, sorcery, astrology, corrupting humanity and producing the Nephilim, giant hybrid offspring. God responded by sending the great flood to cleanse the earth, and the fallen angels were imprisoned until the final judgment. However, the spirits of the dead Nephilim became demons, wandering the earth and tormenting humanity. This myth of fallen angels became foundational for Jewish and Christian demonology. It explained the origin of demons, the source of forbidden knowledge, the reason for human corruption, and the cause of the flood. It also established a template for understanding demons as rebellious spirits who had turned against God and now actively worked to corrupt creation. Different versions of this story appear in various Jewish texts, and early Christian writers like Justin Martyr and Tertullian cited it extensively. The New Testament presents a dramatically different picture from the Old Testament regarding demons. Jesus' ministry, as portrayed in the Gospels, involved extensive encounters with demons. Exorcism was central to his mission, demonstrating the arrival of God's kingdom and the defeat of evil powers. The Gospels describe numerous demonic possessions, with demons recognizing Jesus' divine authority, even when humans failed to do so. In the Gospel of Mark, the first miracle Jesus performs is an exorcism, establishing immediately that spiritual warfare is central to his ministry. The Gospel accounts provide vivid descriptions of demon possession. The possessed exhibit superhuman strength, speak with voices not their own, know things they shouldn't know, and display violent or self-destructive behavior. Demons fear Jesus and beg him not to torment them before their time. In the famous story of Legion, Jesus encounters a man possessed by so many demons that they give their name as Legion, for we are many. Jesus casts these demons into a herd of pigs, which then stampedes into the sea and drowns a story rich with symbolic meaning about spiritual cleansing and the defeat of chaos. Jesus grants his disciples authority to cast out demons, and the book of Acts continues to describe exorcisms performed by the apostles. However, the text also warns against approaching exorcism casually or without proper authority. In one incident, Jewish exorcists attempt to cast out demons in Jesus' name, only to have the demon respond, "Jesus I know, and Paul I know about, but who are you?" The demon then violently attacks the unauthorized exorcists, warning that spiritual warfare requires genuine spiritual authority. The Apostle Paul develops a theology of spiritual warfare that would deeply influence Christian thought. In the letter to the Ephesians, Paul describes Christians as engaged in battle, not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. This cosmic drama positions individual Christians within a vast spiritual war, with demons as organized military forces under Satan's command. The Book of Revelation provides the New Testament's most extensive demonology, though much of it is expressed in highly symbolic, apocalyptic imagery. Satan appears as a great red dragon, who wages war in heaven against Michael and his angels. Defeated, Satan is cast down to earth, where he continues to war against God's people. The text describes demons as frog-like spirits emerging from the mouths of the dragon, beast, and false prophet. It presents hell as a lake of fire prepared for the devil and his angels, where demons and damned humans will be tormented eternally after the final judgment. This New Testament foundation became the basis for nearly 2,000 years of Christian demonological development. Early church fathers elaborated on biblical hints, drawing from Jewish apocalyptic literature, Greek philosophy, and their own experiences with perceived demonic activity. They debated questions that the Bible left ambiguous. How many angels fell with Satan? When did the fall occur? What is the hierarchy of hell? Can demons repent? How can humans protect themselves from demonic attack? Augustine of Hippo, perhaps the most influential early Christian theologian, developed a comprehensive demonology that would shape Catholic teaching for centuries. Augustine taught that demons were angels who had sinned through pride, choosing to love themselves more than God. They maintained their angelic nature and powers, but turned these toward evil purposes. They could perform apparent miracles, influence weather and natural phenomena, plant thoughts in human minds, and tempt people to sin. However, they could not actually create anything, could not compel human will, and could only do what God permitted for his own mysterious purposes. Augustine's theology of demons served multiple functions. It explained the existence of evil in a universe created by a good God. Evil resulted from the free choice of created beings, not from any deficiency in creation itself. It accounted for the powers attributed to pagan gods and magicians. These were real supernatural effects, but produced by demons rather than gods, and it provided a framework for understanding why bad things happen to good people. Demons were constantly at work, testing faith and attempting to lead people astray, all within the mysterious providence of God's ultimate plan. Medieval Christianity saw the full flowering of Christian demonology. Scholastic theologians, combining Aristotelian philosophy with biblical revelation, constructed elaborate systems describing the demonic realm in minute detail. Thomas Aquinas, the greatest medieval theologian, devoted substantial portions of his Summa Theologica to discussing demons. He categorized their powers, explained how incorporeal beings could produce physical effects, described how demons could assume bodies, and analyzed the ways demons could influence human thoughts and emotions. The medieval period also produced elaborate demon hierarchies. The most famous, from the 16th century demonologist Johann Weyer, classified demons into multiple categories. The first hierarchy consisted of demons who remained in higher regions, princes and ministers who maintained Satan's kingdom. The second included those who lived in lower airs, creating storms and disasters. The third consisted of terrestrial demons who mixed with humans. Subcategories included incubi and succubi, sexual demons, poltergeists, familiars, demons who served witches, and various specialized demons associated with particular sins or activities. The concept of specialized demons for different sins became particularly developed. Each of the 7 deadly sins had its associated demon: Lucifer for pride, Mammon for greed, Asmodeus for lust, Satan for wrath, Beelzebub for gluttony, Leviathan for envy, and Belphegor for sloth. This systematization satisfied the medieval love of ordering and categorizing, while also providing practical guidance for confession and spiritual warfare. If you could identify which demon was attacking you, you could employ specific counter-strategies. The practice of exorcism became increasingly formalized and ritualized. The Catholic Church developed official rites of exorcism, which could only be performed by authorized priests with their bishop's permission. These rites involved prayers, invocations of God and saints, sprinkling of holy water, signs of the cross, and commands directed at the demon to depart in Christ's name. The exorcist had to determine whether possession was genuine or merely illness, identify the demon's name, and maintain absolute faith that God's power working through the Church could expel any demon. Exorcism manuals described the signs of genuine possession: speaking unknown languages, displaying knowledge of hidden things, exhibiting strength beyond natural capacity, violent aversion to sacred objects, and blasphemous speech. They also warned of demonic tricks. Demons might pretend to leave while remaining, might speak truth mixed with lies to gain credibility, or might attack the exorcist physically or psychologically. Exorcism was understood as spiritual warfare requiring courage, faith, and careful adherence to prescribed rituals. The witch trials of the early modern period, roughly 1450 to 1750, represented perhaps the darkest chapter in the history of Christian demonology. Tens of thousands of people, mostly women, were accused of making pacts with the devil and executed. The belief that witches existed was nearly universal among both Catholics and Protestants. The Malleus Maleficarum, Hammer of Witches, published in 1486, provided theological justification for witch hunting and practical instructions for identifying and prosecuting witches. According to witch hunting literature, witches made explicit pacts with Satan, renouncing Christ and pledging service to the devil in exchange for supernatural powers. They supposedly attended Sabbaths where they worshipped Satan through obscene rituals, flew through the air, transformed into animals, cast harmful spells, and committed various atrocities. While modern historians recognize that most confessions were extracted through torture, and that witch beliefs reflected social anxieties more than supernatural reality, the witch trials demonstrate how belief in demons could be weaponized with devastating consequences. Protestant reformers maintained belief in demons and Satan but modified Catholic demonology in certain ways. Martin Luther spoke frequently about his personal spiritual battles with the devil and emphasized that Christians were constantly under demonic attack. However, he rejected Catholic exorcism rituals as superstitious and insisted that faith in Christ alone, without elaborate rituals or priestly mediation, was sufficient protection. Protestant demonology tended to be simpler than Catholic, with less emphasis on hierarchies and specialized demons, but no less intense in its conviction that demons were real and dangerous. The Enlightenment brought increasing skepticism about demons, at least among educated elites. Rationalist philosophers argued that demon beliefs were superstitions from less enlightened ages. Advances in medicine provided natural explanations for conditions previously attributed to possession. The witch trials came to be seen as tragic examples of religious fanaticism and ignorance. By the 19th century, many Protestant theologians had begun reinterpreting biblical demon references as primitive expressions of psychological or social phenomena, rather than literal, supernatural entities. However, demon belief never disappeared from Christianity. Conservative and fundamentalist movements maintained traditional views. Pentecostal and charismatic Christianity, beginning in the early 20th century and now representing hundreds of millions of believers worldwide, restored exorcism and spiritual warfare to central places in Christian practice. These movements developed deliverance ministries focused on casting out demons, taught believers to recognize demonic influences in every area of life, and created a global culture of active demon fighting. Contemporary Christian demonology varies tremendously. Some liberal Christians view demons as metaphorical representations of evil systems, internal psychological struggles, or cultural forces. Moderate Christians might believe demons exist but focus more on living virtuously than on spiritual warfare. Conservative and charismatic Christians maintain vigorous demon beliefs, seeing Satan and his forces as actively working to deceive, tempt, and destroy. They practice regular spiritual warfare through prayer, fasting, and deliverance sessions. The influence of biblical and Christian demonology extends far beyond the church. It has shaped Western literature, art, film, and popular culture. The figure of Satan has become an archetypal representation of evil, rebellion, and temptation. The concept of demonic possession has inspired countless horror stories. Christian demonology's moral framework, viewing the universe as a battleground between absolute good and absolute evil, has influenced Western politics, psychology, and social movements. Understanding Judeo-Christian demonology is essential for understanding Western culture more broadly. Whether one believes in literal demons or views them as cultural constructs, their impact on how Western civilization has understood evil, morality, consciousness, and the supernatural cannot be overstated. From ancient Jewish apocalyptic visions through medieval demon hierarchies to modern spiritual warfare, this tradition has continually adapted while maintaining certain core convictions about the reality of spiritual evil and the necessity of resisting it. Islamic demonology. The jinn. Islamic demonology presents a unique and sophisticated understanding of supernatural beings that differs in important ways from both Jewish and Christian traditions, despite sharing common roots in Abrahamic monotheism. At the center of Islamic demonology are the jinn, beings created from smokeless fire who occupy a parallel realm to humanity and possess free will, moral agency, and the capacity for both good and evil. The word jinn comes from the Arabic root, meaning to hide or to conceal, reflecting their nature as beings normally invisible to humans. The jinn are mentioned extensively in the Quran and Hadith, sayings and traditions of the Prophet Muhammad, and belief in them is considered part of Orthodox Islamic faith. To deny the existence of jinn is to deny clear Quranic teaching, making jinn belief more theologically mandatory in Islam than demon belief has generally been in Christianity. According to Islamic tradition, Allah created the jinn from smokeless fire before creating humans from clay. The jinn inhabited the earth first and had their own civilizations, prophets, and religious obligations. Like humans, jinn are required to worship Allah, will face Judgment Day, and will be sent to paradise or hell based on their faith and deeds. This parallel between jinn and humans, both communities of morally responsible beings with free will, distinguishes Islamic demonology from other traditions, where demons are typically fallen angels or inherently evil spirits. The Quran describes multiple types of jinn. Some are righteous believers who worship Allah faithfully. These good jinn listened to the Prophet Muhammad reciting the Quran and accepted Islam. As described in Surah Al-Jinn, they will enter paradise alongside righteous humans. Other jinn are non-believers or sinners who will be punished in hell. The jinn thus represent the full moral spectrum, just as humans do, rather than being categorically evil as Christian demons are typically conceived. However, the term shaitan, Satan, or devil in Islamic theology refers specifically to evil jinn, those who have rejected Allah and work to lead humans astray. All shayatin are jinn, but not all jinn are shayatin. This distinction is crucial for understanding Islamic demonology. When Muslims speak of protection from shayateen or demonic influence, they're referring to the subset of jinn who have chosen evil, not to the jinn race as a whole. The most significant figure in Islamic demonology is Iblis, the personal name of the primary shaitan, equivalent to Satan in Christianity. The Quranic account of Iblis's fall differs notably from Christian tradition. According to the Quran, when Allah created Adam, He commanded the angels and jinn to prostrate before His new creation. All obeyed except Iblis, who refused out of pride, saying, "I am better than him. You created me from fire, and created him from clay." This act of disobedience and pride led to Iblis being expelled from paradise and cursed by Allah. However, Iblis requested and received a reprieve. He would not be destroyed until Judgment Day. During this time, Iblis declared his intention to deceive humanity, to approach them from every direction, and to lead astray all but Allah's sincere servants. Allah granted this permission, declaring that hell would be filled with Iblis and all who followed him, whether jinn or human. Several aspects of this narrative deserve attention. First, Iblis is explicitly identified as a jinn, not a fallen angel, as Satan is in Christian tradition. The Quran states clearly, "He was one of the jinn and departed from the command of his Lord." This makes Iblis's rebellion comprehensible, unlike angels, who lack free will and cannot disobey. Jinn possess the freedom to choose, and Iblis chose pride and rebellion. Second, Iblis's primary sin is pride and refusal to acknowledge humans as worthy of honor. This theme resonates throughout Islamic teachings on shayateen. Their fundamental strategy is to make humans arrogant, to make them forget their dependence on Allah, and to elevate their own desires and opinions above divine guidance. The spiritual warfare in Islam centers on humility versus pride, gratitude versus ingratitude, submission to divine will versus assertion of autonomy. Third, Allah explicitly permits Iblis's activities. This isn't a dualistic cosmology where God and Satan are equal opponents. Rather, Iblis functions as a test for humanity, a tempter whose whispers and deceits serve the divine purpose of distinguishing sincere believers from false ones. Those who maintain faith despite temptation prove their worth, while those who succumb demonstrate their weakness. In this sense, shayateen serve Allah's plan even while rebelling against it, a paradox that Islamic theology navigates through doctrines of divine sovereignty and human responsibility. The Quran describes specific tactics used by Iblis and his shayateen followers. They whisper suggestions into human hearts and minds, a process called waswas. These whispers encourage sin, doubt, despair, arrogance, and forgetfulness of Allah. Shayateen are described as friends and allies to those who reject faith, leading them gradually into greater evil. They beautify sin, making wrong appear right and harmful things appear attractive. They create disputes between people, particularly between spouses and family members. They inspire false religious innovations and extremism. Importantly, Islamic theology emphasizes that shayateen cannot compel humans to sin. They can only suggest, tempt, and deceive. The actual choice to commit evil remains with the human. On Judgment Day, Iblis will disavow responsibility for his followers' sins, reminding them that he only invited them and they accepted willingly. This theology preserves human moral agency and responsibility, even while acknowledging powerful external spiritual influences. Protection against shayateen in Islam involves a comprehensive spiritual regimen. The most important defense is remembrance of Allah, dhikr, and regular prayer. Shayateen flee from environments filled with Quranic recitation and divine remembrance. Specific Quranic verses and chapters are considered particularly powerful for protection, especially Ayat al-Kursi, the throne verse, and the last two chapters of the Quran, Al-Falaq and An-Nas, which specifically invoke Allah's protection from evil whisperers. The practice of seeking refuge in Allah, saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitan ir-rajim, I seek refuge in Allah from the accursed shaitan, is recommended before reciting Quran, entering bathrooms, feeling anger, or any situation where one might be vulnerable to demonic influence. This simple phrase, repeated with sincere intention, creates spiritual protection by invoking divine aid against spiritual attack. Islamic tradition also recommends various practical measures for protection against jinn and shayateen. Muslims should say, Bismillah, in the name of Allah, before eating, entering home, or beginning any significant activity, as this invocation creates a barrier against spiritual intrusion. Houses should be kept clean and free of images or statues, as jinn are attracted to filth and idolatrous representations. Regular charity, kind treatment of others, and avoidance of isolated or impure places, or reduce vulnerability to harmful jinn. The phenomenon of jinn possession exists in Islamic tradition, though it's viewed somewhat differently than Christian demonic possession. A jinn might possess a human for various reasons. The human accidentally harmed the jinn. The jinn fell in love with the human. The human was practicing magic and attracted jinn attention, or an evil jinn simply chose to torment someone. Possession symptoms include personality changes, speaking in strange voices, knowledge of hidden things, and aversion to Quranic recitation. Islamic exorcism, called ruqya, involves recitation of specific Quranic verses over the afflicted person, particularly verses describing Allah's power, the defeat of evil, and divine protection. The exorcist might also blow on the person or on water for them to drink, following the Prophet's example. Unlike some Christian exorcism rituals, ruqya avoids elaborate ceremonial elements and focuses entirely on Quranic recitation and prayer. The underlying principle is that Allah's word has inherent power over all created beings, including rebellious jinn. However, Islamic scholars warn against excessive focus on jinn and demonic explanations for problems. Not every illness or difficulty results from jinn interference. Many have natural causes requiring natural remedies. Attributing everything to jinn can become a form of shirk, associating partners with Allah by giving jinn more power and attention than they deserve. The proper Islamic attitude is awareness of jinn existence, combined with trust in Allah's protection and focus on one's own spiritual and moral development. Sufi Islam, the mystical dimension of Islamic tradition, developed particularly sophisticated understandings of shayateen as spiritual and psychological forces. Sufi teachers identified the nafs, ego self, as an internal shaitan more dangerous than external demons. The nafs al-amara, commanding self, constantly urges towards sin, pleasure-seeking, and spiritual laziness. Combating this internal demon through spiritual discipline, self-purification, and divine remembrance forms the heart of Sufi practice. Sufi literature contains extensive teachings on spiritual warfare against shayatin. This warfare operates on multiple levels simultaneously. External shayatin must be resisted through dhikr and righteous action. The nafs must be disciplined through ascetic practices and moral refinement, and subtle spiritual states must be carefully discerned to distinguish divine inspirations from demonic deceptions. Advanced Sufi practitioners reportedly gain ability to see jinn, communicate with them, and even convert evil jinn to Islam through spiritual power and truth. Folk Islamic practices regarding jinn vary considerably across the Muslim world, sometimes incorporating pre-Islamic traditions. In North Africa, Middle East, and South Asia, complex folk beliefs about jinn have developed, including ideas about jinn families, jinn kingdoms, and various categories of jinn associated with particular locations or activities. Some Muslims visit shrines or holy people, seeking protection against jinn, use amulets inscribed with Quranic verses, or practice traditional magic that blends Islamic and pre-Islamic elements. Orthodox Islamic scholars often criticize these practices as innovations or superstitions, arguing that proper reliance on Allah and adherence to Quranic guidance provides sufficient protection without need for folk magical practices. Yet these traditions persist, demonstrating how official religious teaching and popular practice can diverge, creating rich and complex lived religious experiences that blend orthodoxy with local custom. The concept of the evil eye, while not exclusively Islamic, is strongly present in Muslim cultures and connected to jinn beliefs. The evil eye is thought to cause harm through envious or admiring gazes, sometimes mediated by jinn who act upon the envier's negative emotions. Protection against the evil eye includes reciting specific Quranic verses, wearing blue eye amulets, and avoiding ostentatious displays of wealth or good fortune that might attract envy. Contemporary Islamic discourse on jinn and shayateen continues to evolve. Some modern Muslim scholars attempt to reinterpret jinn as natural phenomena not yet understood by science, or as psychological forces rather than literal beings. However, this rationalist approach remains minority, with most Muslims worldwide maintaining traditional belief in jinn as real spiritual entities. Islamic websites, books, and social media feature extensive discussions of jinn encounters, ruqya techniques, and protection methods, demonstrating the continuing vitality of these beliefs. The global spread of Islam has carried jinn beliefs to regions with their own supernatural traditions, creating interesting syncretisms. In Southeast Asia, Islamic jinn concepts merged with indigenous spirit beliefs. In Africa, jinn were incorporated into existing cosmologies of spirits and ancestors. In the West, Muslim immigrants maintain jinn beliefs even while living in secular scientific cultures, creating interesting negotiations between traditional faith and modern skepticism. Islamic demonology offers unique contributions to the broader study of demon beliefs. Its conception of jinn as morally autonomous beings parallel to humans rather than simply evil spirits provides a more nuanced cosmology than simple good versus evil dualism. Its emphasis on spiritual warfare is primarily internal, focused on purifying the heart and resisting the whispers of one's own desires, offers psychological insights that resonate with modern therapeutic approaches. and its integration of demon belief with rigorous monotheism, where even Satan serves divine purposes, presents theological sophistication that has influenced Islamic philosophy and spirituality for 14 centuries. Eastern perspectives. Buddhist and Hindu demons. Moving eastward, we encounter demon traditions that developed independently of Abrahamic monotheism, offering radically different perspectives on the nature of evil, spiritual adversaries, and the demon realm. Hindu and Buddhist demonologies present entities and cosmologies that challenge Western assumptions about demons, while revealing universal human concerns about suffering, temptation, and spiritual obstacles. In Hindu tradition, the term asura originally referred to powerful divine beings, sometimes gods themselves. The ancient Vedic texts show asuras and devas, gods, as two classes of supernatural beings engaged in eternal conflict, but neither purely good nor purely evil. Over time, as Hindu theology developed, asuras became increasingly associated with negative qualities: pride, deception, violence, and opposition to dharma, cosmic order, and righteousness. The shift from asuras as simply powerful beings to asuras as demons reflects theological evolution within Hinduism. The devas came to represent beings aligned with dharma, cosmic truth, and spiritual evolution, while asuras represented those who pursued power, pleasure, and ego gratification without spiritual wisdom. This isn't absolute dualism. Asuras aren't irredeemably evil, and some stories tell of asuras who achieved enlightenment or gained divine favor through austerities. The distinction is one of orientation and intention, rather than essential nature. Hindu mythology contains countless asura figures, each with elaborate stories. Ravana, the demon king of Lanka in the epic Ramayana, exemplifies the complex Hindu understanding of demons. Ravana was learned, powerful, and devoted to the god Shiva, yet his arrogance and lust led him to kidnap Sita, wife of Rama, an avatar of Vishnu, precipitating his eventual destruction. Ravana isn't simply evil. He's a tragic figure whose great qualities are undermined by fatal flaws, making him simultaneously admirable and condemnable. Another category of Hindu demons is Rakshasas, generally depicted as malevolent beings who disturb religious rituals, harass holy people, and consume human flesh. Rakshasas can shapeshift, create illusions, and possess various supernatural powers. They serve as obstacles and tests for spiritual practitioners, and combating them is part of the heroic journey in Hindu epics. Yet, here too, nuance exists. Some Rakshasas are merely mischievous, rather than evil, and others can be reformed or placated through proper ritual or spiritual power. The concept of Pishakas represents another class of Hindu demons, typically associated with corpses, cremation grounds, and possessing the insane. Pishachas are said to be created from the vices of gods or from particularly sinful humans, and they haunt desolate places, feeding on human energy and causing madness. Protection against Pishakas involves ritual purity, mantras, and the intervention of deities or accomplished yogis. Hindu Tantra developed sophisticated systems for working with demonic energies. Rather than simply banishing or destroying demons, tantric practices sometimes involve invoking and harnessing their power for spiritual transformation. This approach recognizes that energy itself is neutral. What matters is consciousness and intention. A tantric practitioner might deliberately confront demonic forces, whether internal or external, to transmute their energy and achieve breakthrough realizations. This requires tremendous spiritual development and guidance from an accomplished teacher, as the dangers of such practices are acknowledged to be severe. The goddess Kali, while not a demon herself, embodies the fierce, destructive aspect of divine power that slays demons. Hindu iconography depicts Kali wearing a garland of severed heads and a skirt of severed arms, dancing on corpses, drinking blood from a skull cup, imagery that would mark her as demonic in other traditions. Yet Kali is worshipped as a mother goddess who destroys ego, ignorance, and evil, protecting devotees through her terrible aspect. This demonstrates how Hindu tradition can embrace what appears demonic, recognizing destructive power as necessary aspect of cosmic cycles. Buddhist demonology presents perhaps the most psychologically sophisticated understanding of demons in any religious tradition. While Buddhism acknowledges the existence of various supernatural beings, including malevolent ones, its primary focus is on demons as manifestations of mental afflictions and obstacles to enlightenment. The ultimate demon in Buddhism is not an external supernatural entity but ignorance itself, the fundamental misunderstanding of reality that traps beings in suffering. The figure of Mara represents the quintessential Buddhist demon. Mara, whose name means death or destroyer, attempted to prevent Siddhartha Gautama from achieving enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree. Mara sent armies of demons, terrifying visions, and his beautiful daughters to seduce or frighten Siddhartha away from his meditation. When these failed, Mara challenged Siddhartha's right to sit beneath the tree and seek enlightenment. Siddhartha touched the earth, calling it to witness his countless lives of merit-making, and Mara's hosts fled in defeat. This narrative operates on multiple levels. Literally, it describes an encounter with a supernatural being. Symbolically, it represents the internal struggle every practitioner faces. Desire, fear, doubt, and ego all arise to prevent spiritual breakthrough. Psychologically, it depicts the mind's resistance to transformation, the ego's fight to maintain its dominance, and the various mental afflictions that obstruct clear seeing. In Buddhist practice, defeating Mara means recognizing these obstacles for what they are and not being controlled by them. Mara continues to appear in Buddhist texts, tempting the Buddha and his disciples even after enlightenment. In several sutras, the Buddha explicitly identifies Mara's presence or calls out Mara's attempts at deception. This teaches that spiritual attainment doesn't mean demons disappear, but that one gains the wisdom to recognize and neutralize their influence. Mara represents ongoing temptation toward delusion, complacency, and spiritual regression challenges that persist throughout the path. Tibetan Buddhism developed extraordinarily rich demon lore, incorporating pre-Buddhist Bon religion beliefs about spirits and demons with Buddhist teachings. The Tibetan pantheon includes numerous categories of beings: Nagas, serpent, spirits; Yakshas, nature, spirits; Rakshasas, flesh-eating demons; Pretas, hungry ghosts, and many others. These beings inhabit various realms and can help or harm humans depending on how they're treated. Tibetan Buddhist practice approaches demons through multiple strategies. Wrathful deity practices involve visualizing oneself as a fierce, enlightened being capable of subduing demonic forces through spiritual power. Chode practice, a uniquely Tibetan tradition, involves meditating in frightening places, like charnel grounds, visualizing offering one's body to demons and hungry spirits as an act of compassion and non-attachment. This radical practice transforms fear into generosity and recognizes that demons, like all beings, suffer and seek happiness. The Tibetan teacher Mashi Glabdrön, who founded the Chode tradition, taught that demons should be fed rather than fought. She distinguished between outer demons, harmful spirits, inner demons, negative emotions, and mental afflictions, and secret demons, subtle attachments to spiritual experiences. The ultimate demon is attachment to ego self, and the ultimate liberation comes from cutting through this fundamental delusion. Her teachings represent Buddhism at its most psychologically penetrating, using demon imagery to address the deepest levels of consciousness. Another distinctive Tibetan practice involves taming demons through compassion. Rather than exorcising or destroying harmful spirits, practitioners attempt to convert them to the Dharma, recognizing that demons are suffering beings who act from ignorance. Stories tell of great yogis converting violent demons into Dharma protectors through demonstrations of fearlessness, compassion, and spiritual power. This approach reflects core Buddhist values of non-violence and universal compassion, extending even to malevolent beings. The Buddhist concept of paper tigers teaches that demons have only the power we give them through our fear and misunderstanding. When confronted with wisdom and courage, they are revealed as empty, powerless constructs. A story illustrates this. A practitioner sees a terrifying demon and responds with loving kindness rather than fear. The demon shrinks and becomes harmless, revealed as a projection of the practitioner's own mind. This teaching doesn't deny that frightening experiences occur, but points to their ultimate nature as mental creations. Japanese Buddhism incorporates elements from Shinto spirit beliefs, creating hybrid demon concepts. Oni are demon-like beings from Japanese folklore, typically depicted with horns, wild hair, and carrying clubs. Originally Shinto nature spirits, Oni became associated with Buddhist hells, where they torment the damned. However, they also appear in folktales as obstacles that heroes overcome, or sometimes as reformed demons who protect Buddhism. The famous story of Shuten Doji tells of a powerful Oni who terrorized Kyoto until defeated by the hero Minamoto no Raiko. The Buddhist hungry ghost realm, populated by pretas, represents beings tortured by insatiable desire, depicted with enormous bellies and tiny mouths, unable to satisfy their hunger and thirst. Pretas symbolize the suffering caused by addiction, greed, and compulsive craving. Some traditions practice offerings to hungry ghosts, particularly during special festivals like the Ghost Festival, demonstrating compassion for these suffering beings. This practice teaches that even demons deserve compassion, and that feeding others generates merit and spiritual progress. Zen Buddhism tends toward minimalist demonology, consistent with its emphasis on direct experience over elaborate cosmologies. A famous Zen saying declares, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him," meaning don't become attached even to enlightened beings. Applied to demons, this suggests that fixating on demonic explanations for difficulty is itself a distraction from practice. The Zen approach is to face whatever arises, whether called demons or not, with equanimity and present moment awareness. The psychological sophistication of Buddhist demonology has attracted significant Western interest, particularly from psychologists and therapists. The Buddhist understanding of demons as manifestations of mental afflictions resonates with psychological concepts of complexes, shadow aspects, and unconscious drives. The Buddhist strategies for working with demons, recognizing them, befriending them, transforming them through compassion, parallel therapeutic approaches to working with difficult emotions and traumatic memories. Contemporary teachers like Pema Chodron and Sultrim Alione have written extensively about applying traditional Buddhist demon teachings to modern psychological healing. Alione's Feeding Your Demons practice adapts Machig Labdron's Chode teachings for Western practitioners, offering a method for personifying internal struggles, dialoguing with them, and transforming them through compassion. This demonstrates how ancient demon wisdom remains relevant for contemporary spiritual and psychological work. The Eastern perspectives on demons, both Hindu and Buddhist, offer crucial alternatives to Abrahamic demonologies. Rather than absolute dualism between good and evil, they present more fluid boundaries where demons might be reformed, where demonic energies can be harnessed or transformed, and where the primary demon is often internal ignorance rather than external, supernatural evil. This doesn't make Eastern demons less frightening in their contexts, but it provides different frameworks for understanding and working with them that emphasize spiritual development, wisdom, and compassion over warfare and destruction. Medieval European demonology. The medieval period in Europe, roughly from the 5th to the 15th centuries, saw the development of Christian demonology into its most elaborate and systematic forms. Medieval scholars, combining biblical revelation with Greek philosophy and their own theological innovations, constructed detailed models of hell's hierarchy, catalogues of demon names and powers, and comprehensive theories of how demons operated in the world. This period also witnessed the witch trials, where demon belief had devastating practical consequences. Medieval demonology was fundamentally shaped by the synthesis of Christian theology with Aristotelian philosophy that occurred in the 12th and 13th centuries. Theologians like Thomas Aquinas applied Aristotle's philosophical categories to understanding demons. What is their nature? How do incorporeal beings cause physical effects? What are the limits of demonic power? These questions were debated with the same logical rigor applied to any philosophical problem, producing sophisticated demonological theories that attempted to explain supernatural phenomena rationally. Aquinas taught that demons were angels who had sinned through pride and were cast from heaven. They retained their angelic nature and intellectual powers, but lost sanctifying grace and the beatific vision of God. Demons could not repent because angels, being purely intellectual beings, made final, irrevocable choices. Once fallen, demons were forever separated from God and eternally suffered the pain of loss. This suffering intensified their hatred of God and humanity, motivating their constant attempts to lead humans to damnation. According to Aquinas, demons possessed extensive but limited powers. They could move with incredible speed, manipulate physical objects, influence imagination and sensory perception, and plant suggestions in human minds. They had vast knowledge of natural laws and could produce effects that appeared miraculous, but were actually manipulations of natural forces beyond human understanding. However, they could not perform true miracles. Only God could not compel human free will, could not directly know human thoughts. Only God could read minds, and could only act within constraints God permitted. This theological framework served important purposes. It explained how demons could seem so powerful while still being subordinate to God's sovereignty. It accounted for the apparent effectiveness of magic and demonic pacts while maintaining that true supernatural power belonged to God alone. It provided guidance for distinguishing genuine miracles from demonic deceptions, and it preserved human moral responsibility by insisting that demons could tempt but never compel sin. The medieval period produced various demon hierarchies, attempting to organize hell's inhabitants systematically. The most influential was attributed to Pseudo-Dionysius, a 5th century theologian who described 9 orders of angels. Demons were often organized into corresponding anti-orders, dark reflections of the angelic hierarchy. Some schemes classified demons by the sins they promoted, others by their functions or powers, still others by their relationship to specific activities or locations. The Lantern of Light, a 15th century text, identified 7 demon princes corresponding to the 7 deadly sins: Lucifer for pride, Mammon for avarice, Asmodeus for lechery, Satan for wrath, Beelzebub for gluttony, Leviathan for envy, and Belphegor for sloth. Each prince commanded legions of subordinate demons, specialized in tempting humans to their particular sin. This scheme provided a framework for examining conscience, identifying spiritual vulnerabilities, and directing spiritual warfare against specific demonic influences. The concept of demonic specialization became highly developed. There were demons who caused nightmares, demons who created illusions, demons who stirred up lust, demons who provoked anger, demons who fostered heresy, and demons associated with every conceivable sin or affliction. Some demons specialized in tempting particular professions, one demon for merchants, another for clergy, yet another for scholars. This elaborate specialization reflected medieval love of systematic classification, while also making demon belief practical and applicable to daily life. Medieval grimoires, magical textbooks, provided detailed instructions for summoning and controlling demons. The most famous, the Lesser Key of Solomon, or Lemegeton, describes 72 demons, their ranks, powers, and the seals required to bind them. Each demon had specific abilities. One could make people invisible, another revealed hidden treasures, a third taught languages, a fourth caused love or hatred, and so on. The grimoires claimed that by knowing demons' true names and seals, a magician with sufficient courage and ritual purity could compel demons to service. The Ars Goetia, the first book of the Lemegeton, provides precise descriptions of demons, their appearance, the number of legions they command, their office, and what services they provide. For example, Baal commands 66 legions and appears as a man, cat, toad, or combination thereof, teaching cunning and invisibility. Paimon commands 200 legions, appears as a man riding a dromedary with a crown, and teaches all sciences and secrets. These descriptions combine elements from various sources, including Jewish mysticism, classical mythology, and medieval innovation. The existence and use of grimoires created theological problems. The Church absolutely prohibited demonic magic, considering it apostasy and devil worship. Yet the grimoires themselves often claimed that their magic was permissible, even holy, involving invocation of God and angels to compel demons to obedience. This created a genre of learned magic that practitioners attempted to distinguish from diabolical magic. arguing that using God's names to command demons was legitimate, while offering demons worship or making pacts with them was damnable. The Church generally rejected this distinction, maintaining that any deliberate invocation of demons was intrinsically evil regardless of the magician's intentions or methods. Demons were liars who might appear to serve but actually corrupted the magician's soul through pride, curiosity, and trust in dark powers. Even if demons provided real services, the spiritual cost outweighed any temporal benefit. The only legitimate approach to demons was banishing them through exorcism, not attempting to control them through magic. Demonic possession became a major concern in medieval Christianity. Possessed individuals exhibited frightening symptoms, speaking unknown languages, displaying superhuman strength, contorting into impossible positions, violent aversion to holy objects, and revealing hidden information. These signs distinguished genuine possession from illness, though the boundary was often unclear. Possession was understood as punishment for sin, demonic attack on the innocent as a test of faith or the result of witchcraft. Exorcism rituals became increasingly elaborate. The Roman ritual, standardized in 1614 but based on medieval practices, specified exact prayers, invocations, signs of the cross, and commands to be used. The exorcist had to maintain perfect faith and purity, as any doubt or sin could give demons power to resist or attack. Exorcism was understood as spiritual combat, where the exorcist, armed with church authority and Christ's power, battled demons for the possessed person's liberation. Exorcisms could last hours or days, with demons allegedly manifesting visible and audible phenomena as they resisted expulsion. The most infamous aspect of medieval demonology was the witch trials, spanning roughly from 1450 to 175, extending beyond the medieval period proper. Tens of thousands of people, predominantly women, were accused of witchcraft, tortured into confessions, and executed. The witch trials reflected deep anxieties about social change, female sexuality and power, religious conflict, and economic instability, all filtered through an elaborate demonological framework that made such persecution seem not just justified, but necessary. The Malleus Maleficarum, Hammer of Witches, published in 1486 by Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, became the definitive witch-hunting manual. It argued that witchcraft was real and dangerous, that witches were predominantly female due to women's inherent moral weakness and carnal appetites, and that civil and religious authorities were obligated to identify and execute witches. The text provided detailed instructions for interrogation, signs of witchcraft, and refutations of skepticism about witch beliefs. According to witch-hunting literature, witches made explicit pacts with Satan, receiving demonic marks on their bodies and supernatural powers in exchange for worship and service. They attended Sabbaths, nighttime gatherings where witches allegedly worshipped Satan through obscene rituals including infant sacrifice, cannibalism, and sexual orgies with demons and Satan himself. Witches supposedly flew through the air on broomsticks, transformed into animals, cast spells causing impotence, disease, and crop failure, and recruited others into Satan's service. Modern historical research has thoroughly debunked these claims, demonstrating that most witch trial confessions resulted from torture and that witch beliefs reflected social scapegoating rather than supernatural reality. Yet at the time, Belief in witches was nearly universal among both Catholic and Protestant authorities. The few skeptics were accused of being soft on heresy or of ignorance about Satan's power. Even many accused witches genuinely believed they had committed the crimes they confessed to, either through false memory induced by torture or through genuine delusion. The witch trials represent the darkest consequence of elaborate demonology combined with social fear and institutional power. They demonstrate how belief in demons can be weaponized, how theological speculation can justify atrocity, and how gendered violence can be religiously sanctioned. The victims were overwhelmingly vulnerable. Poor women, widows, healers, practicing folk medicine, mentally ill individuals, and those who didn't conform to social norms. Demon belief provided a framework that made their persecution seem righteous, transforming social elimination into cosmic warfare. Protestant reformers rejected many Catholic demonological practices as superstitious but maintained vigorous demon beliefs. Martin Luther spoke frequently about Satan's attacks on him personally, famously throwing an inkwell at a perceived demonic manifestation. He taught that Christians were constantly under assault from demons, but that faith in Christ alone, without elaborate Catholic rituals, provided sufficient protection. Protestant demonology was generally simpler than Catholic, with less emphasis on demon hierarchies and more focus on Satan as the singular adversary, but no less intense in conviction. The early modern period saw gradual decline in learned demonology, at least among educated elites. The scientific revolution provided natural explanations for phenomena previously attributed to demons. The Enlightenment promoted rational skepticism about supernatural claims. The witch trials came to be seen as embarrassing examples of superstitious excess. Belief in demons was increasingly confined to common people and conservative religious circles, while educated society moved toward naturalistic worldviews that excluded supernatural entities. Yet medieval demonology's influence persisted. Its elaborate demon catalogues would be revived by 19th century occultists and remain influential in contemporary ceremonial magic. Its theories about demonic capabilities and limitations continue shaping Christian teachings about spiritual warfare. Its iconography, horned devils, demon hierarchies, possessed innocents, witch sabbaths remains embedded in Western culture through art, literature, and film. Understanding medieval demonology is essential for understanding how Western civilization thought about evil, the supernatural, and the boundaries of legitimate and illegitimate spiritual power. Demons in world folklore, beyond the great religious traditions and learned theological systems, demon beliefs flourish in the folklore of cultures worldwide. These folk traditions reveal how ordinary people understood and dealt with malevolent supernatural forces in their daily lives. Folklore demons are often more immediately practical than theological demons, concerned less with cosmic spiritual warfare and more with explaining misfortune, protecting homes and families, and maintaining social boundaries. Japanese folklore contains extraordinarily rich demon traditions, centered on beings called yokai and oni. The term yokai encompasses a vast category of supernatural creatures, spirits, and demons, ranging from mildly mischievous to devastatingly dangerous. Some yokai are essentially demons, others are more like spirits or monsters, and the boundaries between categories are fluid. This reflects Shinto's animistic worldview, where spirits inhabit natural phenomena, and the influence of Buddhism with its various supernatural beings. Oni Oni are specifically demonic yokai, typically depicted as large, ogre-like creatures with horns, wild hair, sharp teeth and claws, and often red or blue skin. They carry iron clubs and are associated with destruction, violence, and the underworld. Oni appear in Buddhist contexts as demons who torment sinners in hell, and in folk tales as dangerous creatures that must be defeated or appeased. Yet, Oni are not uniformly evil. Some stories tell of Oni who protect Buddhist temples, and the famous festival of Setsubun involves driving out Oni to bring good fortune for the new year. The legend of Shuten Doji tells of a powerful Oni who lived on Mount Oe and terrorized Kyoto, kidnapping beautiful young people and drinking their blood. The hero Minamoto no Raiko and his warriors infiltrated Shuten Doji's lair disguised as monks, offered him sake laced with sleeping potion, and beheaded him while he slept. Even severed, Shuten Doji's head attempted to bite Raiko, demonstrating the Oni's fierce vitality. This story embodies themes of heroism, cunning over strength, and the possibility of defeating even the most fearsome demons. Another category of dangerous yokai are the kappa, water demons dwelling in rivers and ponds. Kappa resemble humanoid turtles with shells on their backs and dishes on their heads containing water. If this water spills, the kappa loses its power. Kappa are blamed for drownings, particularly of children, and for assaulting swimmers. However, kappa can be outwitted. If you bow to a kappa, it will bow back, spilling its water, and even befriended. Some stories tell of kappa who become helpful after being shown kindness or defeated in sumo wrestling. The Yuki-onna, Snow Woman, represents a different type of yokai demon. She appears as a beautiful woman in white kimono during snowstorms, freezing travelers with her icy breath or luring them to death in the snow. Some versions of the legend tell of Yuki-onna falling in love with humans, revealing the ambiguity between demonic and romantic supernatural encounters. The Yuki-onna embodies the dangerous beauty of winter, the personification of natural forces that can kill the unwary. Chinese folklore similarly teems with demonic beings. Gui are ghosts or demons of the dead, particularly those who died violently, unjustly, or without proper burial. Gui may haunt their places of death, seeking vengeance or attempting to resolve unfinished business. They can possess the living, cause illness, or lead travelers astray. Protection against Gui involves proper burial rituals, offerings to ancestors, and Taoist talismans and exorcism rituals. The Chinese Ghost Festival provides a structured time when Gui return to the world of the living to be fed and appeased. Jiangshi are a specific type of Chinese demon monster, reanimated corpses that hop stiffly with arms outstretched, draining life force from the living, caused by improper burial, violent death, or possession by evil spirits. Jiangshi must be controlled by Taoist priests, using spells written on yellow paper and affixed to the creature's forehead. Jiangshi have become popular in Chinese cinema, offering a distinctively Chinese version of vampire zombie mythology. The fox spirit, or Hulijing, represents one of Chinese folklore's most complex supernatural beings. Fox spirits, particularly those who have lived hundreds of years, gain the ability to transform into beautiful women. They may seduce men, drain their life force, cause illness, or create elaborate deceptions. Yet fox spirits aren't uniformly evil. Some seek enlightenment through Taoist cultivation. Others fall genuinely in love with humans, and still others serve as messengers or helpers to deities. The fox spirit embodies the dangerous, transformative power of sexuality and the boundary between animal and human, natural and supernatural. Slavic folklore contains numerous demonic beings adapted from pre-Christian pagan spirits. The Vodyanoi is a male water spirit who drowns swimmers, particularly those who enter water without proper protection prayers. He appears as an old man covered in algae, with glowing eyes and a fishtail. The Rusalka, female water spirits, are the souls of drowned women who lure men to watery deaths. They're particularly dangerous during Rusalka week in early summer, when they emerge from water to dance in forests and fields, killing any man they encounter. The Vila are female demons from South Slavic folklore, spirits of women who died violently or without marriage. They appear as beautiful maidens with supernatural powers who can heal or harm, help or hinder. Vila are fierce protectors of nature who might punish those who harm forests or animals. Yet they may also help heroes who show them respect. They embody wildness, freedom, and the dangerous beauty of untamed feminine power. Baba Yaga, perhaps the most famous Slavic folklore figure, straddles the line between witch and demon. She lives in a hut that stands on chicken legs, flies in a mortar, and is described variously as an evil witch who eats children, or as a difficult helper who aids heroes who approach her properly. Baba Yaga represents wild, uncontrollable nature and the ambiguous power of old women outside patriarchal control. Dangerous, but also wise, capable of destruction or transformation. Norse and Germanic folklore feature various demonic beings, often connected to the old pagan gods and spirits. The Draugr are undead creatures, warriors who return from death to guard their burial mounds and attack the living. They possess superhuman strength, can change size, and bring plague and death. Defeating a Draugr requires heroism, strength, and often specific ritual actions like beheading and burning the corpse. The Draugr embody fears of death's physical reality and the persistent power of the dead to affect the living. Mara, in Germanic folklore, is a demon who causes nightmares by sitting on sleepers' chests. The word nightmare itself derives from Mara. Protection against Mara includes various folk charms, sleeping positions, and blessed objects. This widespread folklore figure reflects universal human experience of sleep paralysis and frightening dreams, given supernatural explanation through demon belief. In Celtic folklore, the Ausi are supernatural beings dwelling in fairy mounds who can be benevolent or malevolent toward humans. While not demons in the Christian sense, they could curse, kidnap, or cause disease. Particularly if offended, the changeling belief held that fairies might steal human babies, leaving fairy children in their place. This belief tragically led to abuse and murder of children judged to be changelings, particularly those with disabilities or illnesses. The fairy folk represent the dangerous, unpredictable power of the otherworld impinging on human reality. The Banshee is a specifically Irish female spirit whose wailing announces upcoming death in certain families. While not evil, the Banshee is deeply feared as a messenger of doom. Her appearance as a young woman, a matron, or an old hag, depending on the version, and her cry strike terror. The Banshee represents the inevitability of death and the thin boundary between living and dead. In Celtic cosmology, African folklore features countless demonic beings, varying enormously across the continent's diverse cultures. In West African traditions, witches and night demons who drain life force from sleeping victims are widely feared. The Obaifo of Ashanti belief is a spirit entity that leaves a witch's body at night as a ball of light, feeding on crops and blood of children. Various protective measures include amulets, ritual scars, and appeasing or binding spirits through traditional magic. Indigenous American traditions similarly contain diverse demon concepts. The Wendigo of Algonquian folklore is a malevolent spirit associated with winter, famine, and cannibalism. Those who resort to cannibalism may become Wendigo themselves, humans transformed into monsters with insatiable hunger for human flesh. The Wendigo legend served as powerful taboo against cannibalism and represents the fear of losing humanity in extreme survival circumstances. Australian Aboriginal mythology includes various malevolent spirits. The Mamu are demon-like beings that punish those who break sacred law. The Yaramaya, who is a small red creature that drops from trees onto travelers, sucking their blood and swallowing them whole, later regurgitating them alive but shorter. Repeated encounters gradually transform victims into Yaramaya themselves. These stories encode survival knowledge and social rules within supernatural narratives. Common patterns emerge across world folklore demons despite vast cultural differences. Demons are associated with liminal spaces, crossroads, thresholds, boundaries between wilderness and civilization, water's edge, twilight between day and night. These dangerous in-between places reflect the human need to mark boundaries between safe and dangerous, known and unknown, domestic and wild. Demons inhabit these boundaries, threatening to cross into human space. Many folklore demons prey specifically on children, reflecting parents' fears for their vulnerable offspring and providing supernatural explanations for infant mortality and childhood illness. Lamia, Lilith, Lamashtu, Yukiona, Rusalka, and countless other demons threaten children, requiring protective rituals and vigilance. These beliefs, while psychologically understandable, sometimes led to tragic responses, including abuse of children thought to be demon-touched or possessed. Sexual demons appear across cultures, succubi and incubi in European tradition, fox spirits in Chinese lore, Yukiona, and Empusa in Japanese and Greek mythology. These beings seduce humans, often draining life force through sexual contact, and embody anxieties about uncontrolled sexuality, infidelity, and sexual desire itself. The beautiful stranger who transforms into a monster represents the danger of sexual temptation and the fear of the unknown other. Shape-shifting is a nearly universal demonic ability. Demons transform into animals, beautiful humans, loved ones, or monstrous forms. This reflects deeper truths about deception. Things are not what they seem. Danger wears attractive masks, and vigilance is required to perceive true nature beneath surface appearance. The shapeshifter represents the fundamental uncertainty of perception and the possibility of being deceived by appearances. Protection methods also show remarkable consistency. Salt, iron, running water, bells, certain plants and herbs, religious symbols, proper names and passwords. These appear across unrelated cultures as demon defenses. Whether these reflect genuine supernatural properties, deep symbolic resonance, or simply parallel human reasoning about barriers and boundaries, Their ubiquity suggests fundamental patterns in how humans conceptualize spiritual protection. Folklore demons serve multiple social functions beyond explaining misfortune. They enforce social norms. Demons punish those who violate taboos, venture where they shouldn't, or behave inappropriately. They mark ethnic and cultural boundaries. Demons are often described as foreign, associated with neighboring peoples or religions, representing the dangerous other. They provide entertainment and pedagogy. Demon stories thrill, frighten, and teach simultaneously, transmitting cultural values through gripping narratives. The relationship between folk belief and official religion is complex. Religious authorities often condemn folklore demon beliefs as superstition, while official doctrine maintains its own demon traditions. Folk beliefs persist despite clerical disapproval, adapting Christian, Islamic, or other religious elements into syncretic systems that blend orthodoxy with local custom. This creative tension produces rich, living traditions that evolve continuously while maintaining deep continuity with ancestral beliefs. Contemporary folklore demons persist even in modern, secular contexts. Urban legends about hook-handed killers, black-eyed children, and internet demons like Slenderman adapt ancient demon patterns to contemporary settings. These modern folklore demons spread through new media, but serve traditional functions, thrilling audiences, encoding anxieties about technology and social change, and maintaining the ancient practice of scaring each other with stories of malevolent beings lurking just beyond the familiar. The study of folklore demons reveals universal human patterns in confronting fear, explaining misfortune, and navigating uncertainty. While specific demon names, appearances, and behaviors vary enormously across cultures, deeper structures remain consistent. Understanding folklore demons means understanding how humans create meaning through story, how communities transmit values through narrative, and how the supernatural provides frameworks for comprehending natural and social reality. Psychological and symbolic interpretations. The 20th century witnessed a revolutionary reinterpretation of demons through the lens of psychology. Rather than supernatural entities, psychologists began viewing demons as projections of internal psychological processes, as symbols for unconscious drives, repressed desires, traumatic memories, and aspects of personality denied or disowned. This shift didn't necessarily deny the reality of demonic experiences, but offered new frameworks for understanding them. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, had little use for supernatural explanations. He viewed demon beliefs as primitive psychology, pre-scientific attempts to understand mental illness and psychological distress. What pre-modern people called possession, Freud understood as neurosis, hysteria, or psychosis. The demons weren't external entities, but symbolic representations of repressed sexual desires, unresolved childhood conflicts, and the punishing superego that tormented consciousness with guilt. Freud's famous case studies can be read as psychological exorcisms, casting out the demons of neurosis through the talking cure. The patient who believes herself possessed by demons is actually suffering from repressed trauma or forbidden desires that manifest as alien presences in consciousness. By bringing unconscious material to conscious awareness, by speaking the unspeakable and acknowledging the unacknowledgeable, psychoanalysis freed patients from their demons, though Freud would never use such language. Carl Jung offered a more nuanced and sympathetic approach to demons and supernatural experiences. Jung didn't dismiss demons as mere superstition, but viewed them as autonomous psychological complexes that could be experienced as external presences. He developed the concept of the shadow, the repressed, denied, or undeveloped aspects of personality that appear in dreams and visions as dark figures, monsters, or demons. The shadow contains everything about ourselves we refuse to acknowledge: our capacity for violence, our socially unacceptable desires, our weakness and vulnerability, our primitive impulses. According to Jung, what religious traditions call demons might be psychological projections of shadow material onto external entities. Rather than acknowledging our own darkness, we project it outward, seeing it as demonic forces attacking us from outside. This projection allows us to fight our shadow while denying it's part of ourselves. The medieval person tormented by demons of lust might be wrestling with sexual desires they can't consciously accept. The modern person convinced they're under psychic attack might be experiencing the return of repressed trauma or disowned emotions. However, Jung didn't reduce demons entirely to personal psychology. He proposed the collective unconscious, a deeper layer of psyche shared by all humanity, containing universal archetypes and images. Demons might be archetypal figures emerging from this collective unconscious, carrying meanings and patterns that transcend individual psychology. The demon archetype represents the dark, destructive, chaotic forces within psyche and cosmos, forces that must be acknowledged and integrated rather than simply repressed or projected. Jungian psychology suggests that the goal isn't to destroy demons, but to integrate them. The shadow must be made conscious, acknowledged as part of ourselves, and incorporated into a more complete sense of self. This process, which Jung called individuation, requires confronting our demons not as external enemies to be vanquished, but as alienated parts of ourselves seeking recognition and integration. From this perspective, exorcism might temporarily banish symptoms, but doesn't resolve the underlying split in consciousness that produced the demonic experience. Jung's approach resonates strongly with certain Eastern traditions, particularly Tibetan Buddhism's teachings about befriending and feeding demons rather than fighting them. Both recognize that what appears as external demonic attack often represents internal processes seeking expression or resolution. Both emphasize transformation and integration rather than combat and destruction. This cross-cultural convergence suggests deep truths about human psychology that different traditions have discovered independently. Contemporary transpersonal psychology has further developed these ideas. Stanislav Grof, based on decades of research with psychedelics and holotropic breathwork, describes non-ordinary states of consciousness where people encounter entities they experience as demons, angels, or other supernatural beings. Grof doesn't claim these entities are objectively real in conventional sense, but neither does he dismiss them as merely hallucinations. They possess a phenomenological reality. They're experienced as real. They behave autonomously, and they can profoundly impact people's lives. Grof describes COAX systems of condensed experience, networks of memories, emotions, and physical sensations organized around core themes, often involving trauma. These systems can be experienced as demonic presences, particularly when they contain intense negative emotions, feelings of threat, or associations with abuse. Therapeutic work might involve dialoguing with these demon figures, understanding their origins in childhood trauma or even in prenatal or birth experiences, and ultimately resolving the underlying patterns they represent. The phenomenon of sleep paralysis provides a natural laboratory for studying demon experiences psychologically. During sleep paralysis, the person is conscious but temporarily unable to move, often experiencing pressure on the chest, difficulty breathing, and terrifying hallucinations. Cultures worldwide have interpreted this experience as demonic attack. The mare or mara sitting on the chest, succubi or incubi assaulting sleepers, ghost possession, or alien abduction. Modern neuroscience understands sleep paralysis as a dissociation between consciousness and the muscle atonia that normally accompanies REM sleep. Yet understanding the neurological mechanism doesn't fully explain the phenomenology. Why do sleep paralysis hallucinations so consistently take demonic or threatening forms? Why the pressure on chest, the sense of malevolent presence, the figures glimpsed in peripheral vision? Some researchers suggest evolutionary explanations. Hyperactive threat detection served survival. Others point to cultural conditioning. People experience demons during sleep paralysis because cultural narratives provide that interpretive framework. Still others maintain mystery, acknowledging that neuroscience describes, correlates, but doesn't exhaustively explain consciousness. The concept of spiritual emergence versus spiritual emergency, developed by Stanislav and Christina Grof, provides another psychological framework for understanding demon experiences. Spiritual emergence involves natural, psychological, and spiritual development that can include challenging experiences. Spiritual emergency occurs when this process becomes overwhelming, producing symptoms that might include feeling attacked by demons or evil forces, experiencing unwanted visions or voices, or sensing malevolent presences. From this perspective, what might be labeled psychosis or demonic possession could actually be a difficult but potentially transformative spiritual process. The person isn't fundamentally ill but undergoing a crisis of development, a death and rebirth of consciousness that Western psychiatry typically doesn't recognize or support. Treatment involves supporting the process rather than suppressing symptoms, helping the person integrate challenging experiences rather than medicalizing and pathologizing them. Trauma psychology offers additional insights into demon experiences. Severe trauma, particularly childhood abuse, produces dissociation, a splitting of consciousness into separate parts that don't communicate or integrate normally. Traumatized individuals might experience these dissociated parts as alien presences, internal voices, or even as demonic entities. In dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder, the person develops distinct alternate personalities, some of which might be experienced as malevolent or demonic. Internal family systems therapy and other trauma-focused approaches work with these dissociated parts dialogically, treating them as legitimate aspects of psyche that form to protect the core self from unbearable experience. What might appear as an internal demon could be a part of personality that holds intense rage, shame, or terror emotions too overwhelming to integrate at the time of trauma. By compassionately engaging these parts, understanding their protective function, and thanking them for their service, therapy can transform demons into allies. The addictions field has long used demon language metaphorically. Addiction is often described as a demon that possesses the person, overwhelming willpower and destroying life. 12-step programs' emphasis on admitting powerlessness and appealing to higher power echoes traditional demonology's recognition that human effort alone cannot vanquish demonic forces. The recovery community's language of fighting demons acknowledges addiction's quasi-autonomous quality. It does feel like being possessed by something alien that wants to destroy you. Whether addiction's demon is a useful metaphor or actually describes the phenomenology accurately remains debated. Some argue that viewing addiction as external demonic possession removes personal responsibility. Others counter that addiction does function like possession. The addicted person genuinely feels controlled by forces beyond conscious will. Effective treatment might involve both acknowledging addiction's autonomous power and reclaiming personal agency. Much as effective exorcism involves both invoking power greater than oneself and asserting the will to be free. Evolutionary psychology offers yet another lens for understanding demon beliefs. Our ancestors, who more readily detected threats, seeing predators in shadows, assuming hostile intent in ambiguous situations, survived better than optimists. This hyperactive agency detection system, selected for over millions of years, might predispose humans to see intentional agents everywhere, including demonic presences. Combined with our pattern-seeking nature and storytelling capacity, this creates conditions where demon beliefs arise naturally and spread rapidly. From this perspective, demons are real in the sense that evolution has wired human brains to perceive them. We're demon-detecting machines, calibrated by evolution to err on the side of false positives. Better to see demons that aren't there than to miss one that is. This doesn't mean demons objectively exist as supernatural entities, but it suggests that demon experiences reflect fundamental features of human cognition rather than simply cultural conditioning or individual pathology. The question of whether demons are real becomes increasingly complex under psychological analysis. Are demons objectively real supernatural entities? Are they psychological projections that feel real? Are they autonomous complexes within psyche? Are they cultural constructs that shape experience? Are they evolutionary artifacts of threat detection systems? Are they symbolic representations of authentic spiritual realities beyond material explanation? Different psychological schools answer differently, and individuals' experiences resist easy categorization. What's clear is that demon experiences are phenomenologically real. People genuinely experience them. They have real effects on behavior and well-being, and they must be taken seriously therapeutically, regardless of metaphysical status. A therapist might not believe in literal demons, but must work respectfully with clients who do, understanding that dismissing their experience as delusion likely won't help. Similarly, religious communities must balance theological conviction with psychological understanding, recognizing that spiritual warfare involves psychological dimensions, regardless of supernatural realities. The psychological understanding of demons doesn't necessarily conflict with religious interpretations. Many religious practitioners embrace psychological insights while maintaining supernatural beliefs. They might recognize that demons work partly through psychological mechanisms exploiting trauma, triggering repressed material, amplifying negative thoughts, while still believing in their objective existence. Conversely, some psychologists remain open to supernatural possibilities while using psychological frameworks therapeutically. The symbolic approach treats demons as meaningful images regardless of ontological status. Demons symbolize destruction, chaos, evil, temptation, and internal darkness. Working with demon symbols therapeutically or spiritually means engaging these realities, which exist whether or not literal supernatural entities do. The medieval person battling demons of lust and pride faced real psychological struggles that remain relevant today. even if we no longer literally believe in succubi or demon hierarchies. Contemporary psychology has arguably made demons more, rather than less relevant, by showing how they map onto psychological realities everyone experiences. We all have shadows, repressed material, dissociated parts, addictive tendencies, and capacity for destruction. We all struggle with temptation, self-sabotage, and internal voices that seem alien to our better selves. Psychological language provides new vocabularies for these ancient experiences, but doesn't eliminate the experiences themselves or fully exhaust their meaning. Demons in popular culture. The 20th and 21st centuries have witnessed an explosion of demon representation in popular culture. Films, television, literature, video games, comics, and music have made demons ubiquitous in contemporary imagination. These cultural representations both reflect and shape how modern people understand demons, creating a feedback loop between ancient traditions and contemporary reimaginings. Literary history contains countless demon portrayals, but certain works proved especially influential. Dante's Inferno, early 14th century, provided vivid descriptions of hell's geography and demons, influencing Western imagination for centuries. John Milton's Paradise Lost, 1667, gave Satan unprecedented depth and complexity, portraying him as a tragic figure whose eloquence and determination made him almost admirable despite his evil. Milton's Satan influenced countless subsequent portrayals, from romantic poets who viewed him as a rebel hero to contemporary anti-heroes who embody Satan's charisma and defiance. Goethe's Faust, published 1808 to 1832, presented Mephistopheles as sophisticated, witty, and philosophical, a demon who could engage in intellectual discourse while pursuing souls. This portrayal moved demons from physical horror toward psychological manipulation and moral ambiguity. The Faust legend, in its various iterations, explores temptation, ambition, the price of knowledge, and whether any goal justifies demonic bargains. It remains continually relevant, adapted and reimagined for each generation. Horror literature of the 19th and 20th centuries further developed demon portrayals. H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic horror presented entities so alien and powerful that they might as well be demons, though he carefully avoided religious frameworks. His great old ones, Cthulhu, Nyarlathotep, Azathoth, inspired generations of writers to imagine incomprehensibly powerful entities indifferent to human existence. While not technically demons, Lovecraft's creations occupy similar imaginative space and influence contemporary demon fiction significantly. The Exorcist, William Peter Blatty's 1971 novel, revolutionized modern demon horror, based partly on a reported 1949 exorcism case. The novel presented demonic possession with unprecedented realism and visceral horror. The 1973 film adaptation became culturally definitive, establishing templates for possession films that persist today. The image of innocent 12-year-old Regan, possessed by the demon Pazuzu, her head spinning, voice transformed, spewing obscenities and physical corruption, shocked audiences and renewed serious consideration of possession and exorcism. The Exorcist's cultural impact cannot be overstated. It made exorcism and possession central to contemporary horror, inspired both fear and fascination with demons, and led to renewed interest in Catholic demonology. Some viewers reported converting to Christianity or returning to church after seeing it. Others experienced psychological disturbance, nightmares, or feeling spiritually attacked. The film blurred boundaries between entertainment and spiritual warfare in ways that troubled both skeptics and believers. Following The Exorcist, possession films became their own subgenre. The Omen, 1976, explored the Antichrist theme, presenting Damien as a child who is literally the son of Satan. Poltergeist, 1982, combined ghosts with demons in a suburban setting, bringing supernatural horror into middle-class American homes. The Conjuring universe, 2013 present, based on cases investigated by Ed and Lorraine Warren, created an entire cinematic franchise from demon possession and haunting stories. Mixing Catholic demonology with contemporary horror filmmaking, television has extensively explored demon themes. Buffy the Vampire Slayer and its spin-off Angel presented demons as common denizens of California, some evil, some neutral, creating a complex demon ecology. Supernatural ran for 15 seasons, chronicling brothers who hunt demons, angels, monsters, and cosmic threats, drawing from multiple religious and folkloric traditions. Lucifer reimagined the devil as a charming nightclub owner who helps Los Angeles police solve crimes while exploring themes of free will, redemption, and self-actualization. These TV shows reflect contemporary fascination with moral complexity and anti-heroes. Demons aren't necessarily evil, angels aren't necessarily good, and simplistic binaries are questioned. Some demons seek redemption, some humans prove worse than demons, and cosmic authority figures often appear morally ambiguous or outright villainous. This reflects postmodern skepticism toward absolute moral claims, while maintaining fascination with supernatural warfare and ultimate questions of meaning. Video games have made demon fighting interactive. The Doom franchise lets players blast through hordes of demons from hell invading Mars and Earth. The Devil May Cry series features Dante, son of a demon, fighting other demons with spectacular combat. Diablo places players in eternal conflict against the prime evils, demons of terror, destruction, and hatred. These games provide cathartic experiences of facing overwhelming demonic threats and emerging victorious through skill and determination. Religious games approach demons more seriously. That Dragon, Cancer explores childhood cancer through metaphors including a demon that cannot be defeated, only endured. Some Christian games present spiritual warfare as their core mechanic, where players use prayer, scripture, and faith-based actions against demonic enemies. While often crude and preachy, these games reflect genuine attempts to translate religious demon belief into interactive media. Music has long engaged with demonic themes. Classical composers depicted hell and demons. Liszt's Mephisto waltzes, Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique, Saint-Saëns's Danse Macabre. Blues musicians joked about or claimed to have made pacts with the devil, adding mystique to their craft. Heavy metal extensively incorporated demon imagery, with bands like Black Sabbath naming themselves after horror films, Slayer writing songs about hell and demons, and countless metal bands using demonic aesthetics. The relationship between metal and demon belief is complex. Some bands genuinely embrace Satanism or occult beliefs. Others use demon imagery purely aesthetically, as rebellion against religious authority or as theatrical performance. Some Christian metal bands use similar imagery while fighting for rather than against God. The sonic intensity of heavy music maps well onto imagined sounds of hell and demons, while transgressive imagery attracts youth rebelling against conventional morality. The satanic panic of the 90 seconds saw conservative Christians accusing various media of promoting Satanism and demon worship. Dungeons and Dragons was blamed for leading youth into occultism and suicide. Heavy metal faced similar accusations, backwards masking alleged hidden messages when records were played in reverse was claimed to contain satanic propaganda. Daycare workers were falsely accused of satanic ritual abuse in cases that ruined lives before being debunked. The satanic panic represented cultural anxiety about youth culture, changing media, and perceived moral decline, all filtered through demon belief. It demonstrated how demon fears could be weaponized against subcultural expression, and how moral panics leverage supernatural anxieties. It also revealed persistent belief in demons' cultural influence. Despite secularization, millions of Americans genuinely believed that demons were recruiting youth through media. Comic books and graphic novels have extensively explored demons. Hellboy, created by Mike Mignola, features a demon summoned by Nazis who was raised by paranormal investigators to fight evil, exploring themes of destiny, choice, and whether origins determine character. Constantine presents John Constantine, a working-class British magician who battles demons while chain-smoking and struggling with his own moral compromises. Spawn tells of a murdered assassin who makes a deal with Hell's ruler, returning as a Hell spawn who fights both heaven and hell. These and similar works explore what happens when heroes themselves are demonic or demon-associated. They question whether demons are inevitably evil, or whether consciousness and choice matter more than origins. They often portray heaven as authoritarian or corrupt, and hell as honest about its nature, inverting traditional moral hierarchies while maintaining supernatural frameworks. This reflects contemporary skepticism toward institutional religion, while preserving fascination with cosmic spiritual realities. Anime and manga extensively feature demons, often drawing from Japanese yokai traditions while incorporating Western Christian demonology. Devilman explores what happens when a human merges with a demon to fight other demons, examining themes of identity, violence, and apocalypse. Demon Slayer became a global phenomenon, with its story of a boy fighting demons who murdered his family. Blue Exorcist presents Satan's son, training to become an exorcist, to defeat his father. These works blend action, horror, and philosophical exploration of demon themes. The explosion of demon representation in popular culture has several significant effects. It normalizes demon belief, or at least demon imagination. Even skeptics absorb demon lore through entertainment. It creates a shared cultural vocabulary where demon references are immediately understood. It provides frameworks for thinking about evil, temptation, and moral struggle that remain relevant even for secular audiences. And it keeps ancient religious concepts circulating in contemporary consciousness. However, popular culture demon portrayals often diverge significantly from religious traditions. Film demons must be visually spectacular, and narratively compelling in ways that traditional demons need not be. Entertainment demons are safely contained within fiction, lacking the existential threat religious demons pose. Pop culture can play with moral ambiguity and demon sympathy in ways strict religious frameworks generally cannot. This creates an interesting tension between entertainment and belief, where people who would never attend church maintain elaborate knowledge of demon lore acquired through media. The internet age has accelerated demon proliferation in culture. Creepypastas, horror stories spread through forums and social media have created new demon figures like Slenderman, who despite being recently invented has attained quasi-folkloric status. Online communities discuss demons with mixture of belief, skepticism, role-playing, and irony that makes sincerity difficult to assess. Memes featuring Satan or demons circulate widely, treating ancient evil as humorous rather than threatening. This democratization and defanging of demon imagery might represent secularization or might be cultural play that coexists with genuine belief. Many people simultaneously treat demons as entertainment and maintain religious convictions about their reality. Others engage demon imagery aesthetically or metaphorically while considering literal demon belief primitive. Still others find in popular demon culture an accessible entry point to spiritual exploration or occult practice that might eventually deepen into serious engagement. The persistence of demons in popular culture, even in increasingly secular societies, suggests something about human psychology and culture that demons address. We need stories about evil, temptation, corruption, and cosmic struggle. We need figures who embody what we fear and hate. We need frameworks for thinking about moral compromise and ultimate consequences. Demons provide all this. Their malleability, allowing endless reconfiguration while maintaining core recognizability. As long as humans struggle with evil and seek to understand it, demons will persist in our stories, screens, and imagination. Modern occultism and demonology, while mainstream Western culture has largely secularized, demon belief and practice haven't disappeared but rather migrated to alternative spiritual movements, occult subcultures, and esoteric communities. Modern occultism has revived and reimagined traditional demonology, creating new approaches to demon summoning, working with demons, and understanding demonic forces. This contemporary occult renaissance represents one of the most fascinating developments in demonology's history. The revival of ceremonial magic in the late 19th and early 20th centuries brought grimoire demonology back into active practice. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, founded in 1887, taught elaborate magical systems that included invoking and banishing various entities, including demons. Golden Dawn magicians studied the Ars Goetia and other grimoires, developing rituals for safely summoning the 72 demons and compelling them to service, while claiming to practice high magic distinct from black magic. Golden Dawn taught techniques that medieval Christianity would have condemned as diabolical. Aleister Crowley, the most infamous occultist of the 20th century, extensively worked with demons and demonic imagery. His Liber Samech provided a ritual for attaining knowledge and conversation of one's holy guardian angel, drawing partly on the grimoire tradition of demon conjuration. Crowley claimed that what religious people feared as demons were actually aspects of psyche or impersonal cosmic forces that magicians could utilize for spiritual development or practical aims. His motto, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," rejected conventional morality in favor of discovering and fulfilling one's true will. whatever the cost. Crowley's influence on modern occultism cannot be overstated. His writings, while often deliberately obscure, provided a template for approaching demons pragmatically rather than fearfully. He presented magic as a technology for transformation rather than either religious devotion or diabolical corruption. This pragmatic, experimental approach appealed to countercultural seekers and remains influential in contemporary occultism, chaos magic, and left-hand path traditions. The Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey in 1966, represented a different approach to demon embrace. LaVey's Satanism was explicitly atheistic. Satan was a symbol of individualism, rational self-interest, and rebellion against Christian morality, not a literal supernatural being. LaVeyan Satanists performed rituals invoking demons as psychological psychodrama rather than supernatural summoning. The demons represented aspects of self being celebrated and unleashed rather than external entities being petitioned. This symbolic approach attracted those who found demon imagery powerful but couldn't accept supernatural metaphysics. However, other Satanist groups took more theistic approaches. The Temple of Set, founded by Michael Aquino after splitting from LaVey's Church of Satan, taught that Set, the Egyptian god of chaos, often identified with Satan, was a real entity with whom initiates could develop relationships. Theistic Satanists generally believe in Satan and demons as real spiritual beings, rejecting the atheistic approach while maintaining Satanism's opposition to Christian morality and embrace of dark aesthetics. The rise of chaos magic in the 1980 seconds brought a radically pragmatic approach to demonology. Chaos magicians argued that belief is a tool. Adopt whatever belief system helps achieve results, then discard it when done. From this perspective, demons might or might not objectively exist, but treating them as real, summoning them, and working with them can produce genuine results. Chaos magic strips away theological concerns and focuses purely on effectiveness. If working with demons gets results, use demons. If it doesn't, try something else. This instrumental approach to demons strips away much of the fear and moral concern traditional demonology involves. Demons become simply tools in the magician's kit, no more inherently evil than a knife is inherently murderous. What matters is the magician's intent and skill, not the demon's nature. This perspective horrifies traditional religionists, but appeals to postmodern practitioners comfortable with moral relativism and technological approaches to spirituality. Contemporary grimoire magic has experienced significant revival. Publishers like Scarlet Imprint and Three Hands Press have released beautiful editions of classical grimoires alongside new works exploring and updating demon summoning traditions. Modern grimoiric practitioners study medieval and Renaissance texts, reconstruct historical rituals, and experiment with demon conjuration. Some approach this as historical reconstruction, others as living magical practice. Online forums and communities allow practitioners worldwide to share experiences, techniques, and results. Modern demon conjuration typically involves careful preparation, including ritual purification, creation of magical circles, and triangles for containing summoned demons, preparation of seals and sigils corresponding to specific demons, and invocations, calling the demon to manifest. Practitioners report various experiences. Some describe actual manifestations, with visual and auditory phenomena, Others describe subtle presences felt rather than seen. Still, others frame the experience entirely psychologically, as internal dialogue with aspects of psyche. The question of safety remains paramount. Traditional grimoires emphasized protection, magic circles, divine names, consecrated tools to prevent summoned demons from harming the magician. Modern practitioners maintain similar cautions, though interpretations vary. Some believe demons are genuinely dangerous entities that could possess, curse, or drive mad the unprepared. Others view danger as primarily psychological, confronting one's shadow, accessing traumatic material, or inducing paranoid states rather than actual demonic attack. Responsible teachers emphasize starting with simpler practices before attempting demon conjuration. Goetic magic has become particularly popular among contemporary occultists. The 72 demons of the Ars Goetia are extensively discussed online, with practitioners sharing experiences of working with specific demons, comparing results, and developing new understandings. Each demon is said to offer particular services, finding hidden treasures, teaching languages or sciences, causing love or hatred, revealing past or future, making people invisible, and countless other capabilities. Modern practitioners treat this as a spiritual technology, approaching demons as specialists who can be consulted for their expertise. The rise of the internet has dramatically transformed occult demonology. Previously, accessing grimoires required rare books or secretive initiatory orders. Now, texts are freely available online, along with videos demonstrating rituals, forums discussing techniques, and communities of practitioners sharing experiences. This democratization means anyone curious about demon summoning can learn techniques and attempt conjuration without traditional gatekeeping. Whether this represents positive democratization or dangerous access to powerful practices without proper training remains debated. Demonolatry, demon worship, represents another contemporary development. Rather than commanding or compelling demons as traditional grimoire magic attempts, demonolatrists approach demons as deities worthy of veneration and worship. Different traditions organized demonolators include the Order of the Nine Angles, which approaches demons as dark gods associated with esoteric transformation. Others develop personal practices, building altars to specific demons, making regular offerings, and seeking to develop ongoing relationships rather than one-time transactions. This approach inverts traditional Christian demonology. Demons aren't enemies to be exorcised, but allies, teachers, or gods to be honored. Demonolatrists often reinterpret Christian narratives. Satan wasn't evil, but was a liberator, bringing knowledge and freedom. The demons punished by God were actually rebels against cosmic tyranny. This mythology appeals to those alienated from Christianity, who nonetheless find powerful meaning in its symbolic cast of characters, reinterpreted through oppositional lens. Some contemporary magical approaches blend demon work with psychology and therapy. Practitioners might use demon invocation as deep psychological exploration, with each demon representing different aspects of psyche or different shadow qualities. Working with demons becomes a method of self-discovery and integration, approaching internal darkness through powerful symbolic frameworks. This psychological approach sometimes overlaps with Jungian analysis, particularly approaches that take archetypes and autonomous complexes seriously as quasi-entities within psyche. The left-hand path, a category encompassing various traditions that celebrate individualism, antinomianism, and self-deification, often incorporates demon work. Left-hand path practitioners reject conventional morality and religious authority, seeking apotheosis through deliberately transgressive practices. Demons serve as symbols of this rejection and as allies in spiritual warfare against cosmic authority. The left-hand path's appeal lies partly in its presentation of an alternative spiritual path that doesn't require submission, humility, or conventional virtue. Contemporary demon magic raises profound ethical questions. Is summoning demons inherently harmful? Can demons be worked with ethically? What responsibility does the magician bear for consequences of their workings? Traditional religious answers condemn all demon work as evil. Modern practitioners offer various responses. Demons are morally neutral tools. Demons help those who approach them correctly. Working with demons is dangerous but potentially valuable for spiritual development. Or demon work is simply one magical approach among many, with its own risks and rewards. The commercialization of demon magic represents another contemporary development. Occult shops sell demon summoning kits. Books promise power through demon pacts, and practitioners advertise magical services including demon conjuration on behalf of clients. This commodification of demonology transforms ancient spiritual warfare and forbidden magic into consumer products. Critics argue this trivializes and defangs genuinely powerful practices. Defenders note that magic has always had commercial dimensions and accessibility benefits spiritual seekers, regardless of economic class. The question of whether modern practitioners actually contact demons remains unsettled. Believers report dramatic experiences, life changes, and apparent supernatural phenomena. Skeptics explain these through psychology, expectation, suggestion, altered states of consciousness, coincidence, and selective memory. Practitioners themselves often hold complex positions, simultaneously believing demons are real and recognizing psychological dimensions of their practice. The lack of objective verification means demon magic remains unfalsifiable. Claims can neither be definitively proved nor disproved. Modern occult demonology demonstrates that demon belief and practice persist robustly, even in secular scientific culture. Rather than disappearing, demonology has adapted, finding new contexts, new practitioners, and new purposes. Whether viewed as spirituality, psychology, creative mythology, or dangerous delusion, contemporary demon